Imagine paying $250 a night only to discover the sheets were never changed. Shockingly, studies show that nearly 1 in 5 hotel rooms fail basic cleanliness checks, and some of the biggest chains are repeat offenders. And if you think paying more guarantees quality, the truth might surprise you. Today, we're exposing the hotel chains you should avoid at all costs, and just as importantly, the 3 that consistently deliver real value, safety, and comfort. And let me tell you, starting at number 15, there is a name so familiar you'd never expect it here. It's one of the most popular brands worldwide, yet it hides some of the worst guest experiences. Before we dive in, let me ask you, have you ever checked into a hotel and immediately regretted it? Drop the chain's name in the comments. You might find it on this list. And now, let's start with number 15. What made this incredibly popular brand fall all the way to the bottom? Number 15. Holiday Inn. Have you ever walked into a hotel lobby and instantly felt like time stopped in the 1990s? That's the recurring complaint about Holiday Inn. It's one of the most recognized names in the world, but recognition doesn't equal reliability. Travelers report wildly inconsistent standards. One property freshly renovated and spotless, the next one tired, dim, and reeking of neglect. And this inconsistency matters because when you're on the road, predictability is priceless. The troubling part is how often basics are missed. Guests talk about stained carpets, malfunctioning air conditioners, and breakfasts that feel more like high school cafeteria experiments than hospitality. That gap between the Holiday Inn brand promise and the real guest experience erodes trust, and trust, once broken, is expensive to rebuild. A popular name doesn't guarantee comfort. What makes this even more frustrating is the scale of Holiday Inn's network. With thousands of properties worldwide, you'd expect consistent oversight, yet quality control often slips, leaving travelers to gamble with their reservations. Imagine booking a stay thinking you'll get family-friendly dependability, only to discover it's closer to a budget roadside stop. That shock can ruin a vacation before it begins. Consistency is not optional. So what's the takeaway here? Don't assume brand loyalty translates into guest loyalty. If you're considering Holiday Inn, do the legwork. Read recent reviews for the specific property, not just the chain. Look for photos from real guests, not polished marketing images. And always have a backup plan. Sometimes switching to a smaller, lesser-known competitor delivers a much better night's sleep. One big logo doesn't equal big quality, and if Holiday Inn shows how a famous name can disappoint, the next chain proves how nostalgia can cloud reality. What looks warm and welcoming from the road often feels very different once you step inside. Number 14. Days Inn. There's a certain romance to the classic American road trip, the open highway, small-town diners, and neon motel signs glowing in the night. For decades, Days Inn has been part of that picture. But behind the nostalgia lies a harsher truth. Many properties have struggled to keep up with modern standards. What looks welcoming from the freeway can quickly feel disappointing once you're inside. The problem isn't uniform neglect, it's the inconsistency. Some Days Inns are tidy, friendly, and exactly what you need after a long drive. Others, though, feel trapped in a different era. Dim lighting, sagging mattresses, and a sense of cutting corners. Guests often describe them as hit or miss, and when you're exhausted, that gamble doesn't feel worth the risk. Sleep should be dependable, not a lottery ticket. Then there's the matter of safety. Reviews often mention poorly lit parking lots, thin walls, or doors that don't quite seal. In travel, peace of mind is as important as price. The low nightly rate can look like a bargain until you realize what's missing: security, comfort, and a restful night's sleep. Those things are worth far more than a saved $20 bill. So the lesson is clear. Sometimes the cheapest sign by the highway comes with invisible costs. It may save your wallet, but it can tax your nerves. And in the long run, nerves are harder to repair than budgets. Before we keep climbing this list, here's a quick reminder. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this ranking and more insider travel tips ahead. Because if Days Inn was a gamble, the next chain is a different kind of letdown. One that looks polished on the surface, but still leaves guests disappointed. Let's move to number 13. Number 13, Ramada. Ramada is one of those names that looks reassuring on a booking site. The logo suggests mid-scale comfort, a step above roadside motels but still affordable. Yet too often, guests walk in expecting reliability and walk out shaking their heads. The core problem? Ramada has spread so widely under the Wyndham umbrella that brand consistency has been stretched thin. Expansion came at the expense of standards. What frustrates travelers most is the mismatch between expectation and reality. The website photos promise a polished, business-friendly stay. The actual property might deliver peeling wallpaper, worn-out furniture, and elevators that feel like relics of another century. That kind of letdown doesn't just ruin a night's sleep, it makes people question the entire chain. Trust evaporates quickly. Some travelers even compare the experience to a lottery. Every Ramada is different, and you never know what you're going to get. Reviews range from surprisingly excellent to never again, which makes booking one a gamble. And vacations, business trips, or even family visits shouldn't feel like casino bets. Predictability is the real luxury. So here's the actionable takeaway. If you're tempted by a Ramada, double-check reviews within the last 6 months. Don't rely on older feedback. Standards can shift dramatically, and if you see recurring notes about dated rooms or maintenance issues, treat it as a red flag. A slightly higher nightly rate elsewhere often buys you peace of mind. Peace of mind lasts longer than savings. And while Ramada is a cautionary tale of expectations gone wrong, the next name on our list adds another layer of risk. It looks family-friendly, but too often leaves families regretting the stop. Let's keep going. Number 12, Quality Inn. There's a certain boldness in calling your brand quality. It's almost like the name itself dares you to find fault. But that's the problem. When the sign over the door makes a promise that big, the disappointment feels sharper when reality doesn't measure up. And with Quality Inn, that gap shows up more often than you'd expect. I've heard stories from travelers who booked a room after a long drive, only to walk into a lobby that smelled faintly of mildew, where the carpet had seen more decades than they had, and where the front desk clerk looked more surprised than welcoming. That's not quality, it's survival. And you can feel it in the little things. Wobbly chairs, buzzing lights, thin sheets that barely cover the mattress. Small details add up fast when you're paying for rest. But here's the strange part. Once in a while, you'll stumble into a Quality Inn that's spotless, freshly painted with breakfast that actually feels like a perk rather than a punishment. It's not a baseline, it's a lottery. Do you get the hidden gem or the headache in disguise? Rolling the dice isn't how travel should work. That unpredictability is what wears people down. It's not just the money, it's the sense that you can't trust the name itself. And when you're tired, when you're halfway through a road trip, that's the last mental battle you need. So ask yourself this, is maybe it'll be fine really good enough when you're spending the night in a strange city? That's the question Quality Inn forces on its guests, and for many, the answer has already been no. Now, the next chain on our list takes us down a different road, one that's rooted in nostalgia, but often leaves travelers wishing the past had stayed in the past. Number 11, Best Western. Best Western is a name that carries weight, especially for older generations of travelers. For decades, it was the safe bet on family road trips, the dependable choice when you saw that sign glowing off the interstate. And for a while, that reputation was earned. But reputations don't last forever. These days, the phrase I hear most often about Best Western is, "It depends." One location can feel freshly updated, with friendly staff and decent breakfasts. The next looks like it hasn't changed since the late 70s. You walk into the room, set your bag down, and suddenly wonder if that floral bedspread was part of the original decor. The sense of comfort evaporates when the space feels more like a museum of outdated furniture than a hotel. And here's the bigger issue. When a chain leans too heavily on nostalgia, it risks becoming trapped by it. Best Western often feels caught between trying to modernize and clinging to the image of what it once was. The result is a brand with no clear identity, too inconsistent to guarantee a good stay, too bland to excite loyalty. Travelers want predictability or personality. This chain struggles to deliver either. Now that doesn't mean every Best Western is a disaster. Some properties shine. Independent owners who invest in upgrades, who care about details, who bring back the old spirit of dependable travel. But that's not something you can count on. And trust, when it comes to where you sleep, is everything. So while the name might spark fond memories, don't let nostalgia make your decision for you. The road has changed, and so has this brand. And speaking of the road, our next stop takes us to a chain that built its empire in Europe, one that dominates city centers and highway exits alike, but often leaves guests questioning whether efficiency should come at the cost of comfort. Number 10. Ibis. Step into almost any European city, and you'll spot the red Ibis logo within minutes. It's everywhere, by train stations, on busy boulevards, near airports. Ibis has built its reputation on being affordable, efficient, and always available. And to be fair, it delivers on some of those promises. But here's the catch. Efficiency often replaces comfort. If you've ever stayed at one, you know the rooms are small, sometimes very small. Minimalist is the polite way to describe them. Spartan might be more accurate. For solo travelers or business trips, that can be fine, even refreshing. But when you're on holiday, the lack of space and character can feel suffocating. 4 walls, a bed, and a bathroom the size of a closet. That's the Ibis formula. Cleanliness is usually not the issue. In fact, many Ibis hotels pride themselves on being tidy and functional. The problem is atmosphere. You could be in Paris, Berlin, or Madrid, and your room would look almost identical. There's no sense of place, no memory that sticks. Travel is supposed to give you stories. Ibis rooms give you little more than receipts. That doesn't mean they're useless. Sometimes reliability matters more than flair. A late-night arrival at the airport, a one-night stop before a connection, a quick business trip. In those situations, Ibis does its job. But as a brand, it often trades away the very thing people travel for: warmth, experience, and a sense of escape. So the lesson is simple. Know what you're booking. If you want cheap, clean, and predictable, Ibis might suit you. If you want a stay that feels like part of the trip rather than just a pause in it, you'll likely leave disappointed. And speaking of disappointment, the next chain takes that idea to a bigger stage. It's not about tiny rooms, it's about once grand hotels that too often feel like they're fading into yesterday. Number 9. Sheraton. For many travelers, Sheraton carries a kind of old-school prestige. It's a brand people once associated with international business trips, wedding receptions, or that big city feeling when you first checked in. And to its credit, Sheraton still has some impressive properties. But the trouble is, it also has plenty that feel stuck in another decade. Walk into the lobby of a Sheraton today, and you're rolling the dice. In some cities, you'll find gleaming marble floors, attentive staff, and all the trappings of a polished 4-star stay. In others, you might step into a lobby that looks tired, with furniture worn down by decades of traffic and a sense that management has been coasting on the name rather than reinvesting in the brand. That unevenness makes Sheraton unpredictable, but it's a higher kind of unpredictability than the budget chains. At least here, the worst is still serviceable. Guests often describe Sheraton as fine but forgettable. The rooms are usually large enough, the beds comfortable enough, the amenities adequate. But for a chain that once set the standard for upscale travel, fine isn't exactly a compliment. When you're paying premium prices, you expect more than adequacy. You expect personality, and that's the missing ingredient. Sheraton delivers function without flair, comfort without character. It rarely offends, but it rarely inspires either. In a sense, that's why it lands in the middle of our list. Better than the unreliable budget brands, but not strong enough to compete with today's best names in hospitality. If Sheraton feels like a brand trying to hold on to its former glory, the next chain shows what happens when a company manages to stay modern, but still can't quite close the gap between good intentions and great experiences. Number 8. Novotel. Novotel is one of those brands that feels like the safe middle ground. It's not aiming for luxury, but it doesn't sink into budget territory either. Step into a Novotel in Paris or Madrid, and you'll probably find a modern lobby, clean lines, and a design that feels corporate but polished. For business travelers, that kind of predictability can be comforting. You know what you're getting, and most of the time, it's exactly fine. The strength of Novotel is consistency. Unlike Sheraton, where you might encounter a beautiful flagship or a worn-out relic, Novotel usually sticks to its formula: mid-range comfort, straightforward service, and a touch of contemporary design. It may not wow you, but it rarely leaves you completely disappointed. And in the world of hotels, that kind of reliability counts for something. Of course, the trade-off is personality. Many guests describe Novotel rooms as efficient rather than warm. Functional beds, clean bathrooms, decent breakfasts. That's the core package. But if you're traveling for adventure, romance, or the kind of trip you want to remember forever, Novotel probably won't make the highlight reel. It's a hotel you use, not one you talk about later. Still, compared to the unpredictability of budget chains, Novotel feels like a step up. Families often appreciate the kid-friendly touches. Business guests like the workspaces, and the central locations are hard to argue with. For the price range, you get stability, and stability is valuable. So where does that leave us? Novotel isn't a destination in itself, but it's a dependable base camp for whatever adventure lies outside its walls. And in a way, that's the charm. It stays out of the way. Next, though, we move into a chain that's built a stronger reputation for reliability. And unlike Novotel, it doesn't just fade into the background. It knows how to leave an impression. Number 7. NH Hotels. NH Hotels has a strong presence across Europe, especially in Spain, Italy, and major capitals. For many business travelers, it's become a go-to option. Modern, tidy, and usually well located in city centers. Compared to Novotel, NH often feels a bit fresher, with sleeker design and a touch more character. You walk into the lobby and, at least at first glance, it looks like a brand that understands today's traveler. But scratch beneath the surface and the cracks begin to show. NH has built its reputation on functionality, yet service can feel mechanical. You'll get efficiency, yes, but warmth, that's less reliable. Guests sometimes describe the experience as transactional, as if you're just moving through a system rather than being welcomed into a space. And when you're paying mid-range prices, that lack of human touch leaves a mark. Rooms tend to be comfortable, often with decent workspaces and stylish enough decor. Still, maintenance can be uneven. A newly renovated NH feels crisp and modern, while another property down the street might show peeling paint or outdated bathrooms. That inconsistency doesn't sink the chain, but it reminds you this isn't luxury. It's middle-of-the-road hospitality with occasional rough edges. Where NH does shine is location. Business districts, cultural hubs, near public transport. You're usually where you need to be. For quick city stays, that's valuable. But if you're looking for something memorable, something that feels more than functional, NH won't deliver. It's a tool, not an experience. So yes, NH stands above the unpredictability of budget chains and the tiredness of Sheraton. But it's not a brand that lingers in memory. You'll sleep well, you'll check out smoothly, and then you'll move on. And moving on is exactly what we'll do, because the next chain in our ranking has a bigger name, a louder reputation, and expectations that don't always match reality. Number 6. Hilton. Say the word Hilton and most people instantly picture prestige. The brand has been tied to business elites, celebrity stays, and that classic sense of international travel. And in fairness, Hilton has some beautiful properties that live up to the image. Sleek high-rises, attentive staff, and all the perks of a polished 4-star chain. At its best, Hilton feels like a taste of luxury without stepping into the ultra-premium market. But here's the reality. The Hilton name covers a massive range of hotels, from elegant flagships to tired DoubleTrees and worn-down Hamptons. That scale is both its power and its weakness. You might walk into a Hilton in New York that feels like a first-class experience, and then book another in a smaller city that looks and feels like it's been frozen since 1998. Consistency is a constant struggle. Guests often highlight the nickel and dimming effect. high nightly rates paired with add-on fees for Wi-Fi, parking, or even bottled water. When you're already paying premium prices, those little charges sting. And while service can be excellent at flagship locations, other properties suffer from staff shortages or underwhelming hospitality. Prestige without service quickly loses its shine. That doesn't mean Hilton is a bad choice. For loyalty program members, the perks can add real value. And when you land at one of the better properties, the experience is solid. But for a chain that sells itself as upscale, too many of its hotels fall into average. Average isn't what you want when you're booking a name like Hilton, so Hilton earns its place above the middle pack. Reliable enough, occasionally impressive, but too often coasting on reputation. And that brings us to the next brand, one that's smaller in scale but often sharper in delivery. Let's take a look. Number 5. Hyatt doesn't have the sheer footprint of Hilton or Marriott, and in some ways, that works to its advantage. Instead of trying to cover every highway exit and airport strip, Hyatt positions itself more selectively. City centers, resort destinations, places where presentation matters, and often that selectiveness shows. Many Hyatt properties feel cleaner, fresher, and more thoughtfully designed than their bulkier competitors. Guests often point out that Hyatt has a knack for balancing comfort with modern style. Rooms tend to be spacious, lobbies lean contemporary rather than dated, and service, at least in higher-end locations, earns steady praise. When Hyatt gets it right, it feels like a chain that understands what today's traveler actually wants. A place that's practical but doesn't sacrifice atmosphere. But here's the catch. Hyatt's smaller scale also means fewer options. In some regions, especially outside major U.S. cities or global hubs, you just won't find one. And when you do, the price tag can creep higher than competitors, sometimes without delivering a noticeably superior experience. A Hyatt place off the highway may look sleek, but at the end of the day, it's still just a stopover spot, often priced like something more. That duality, polished and appealing in many cases, but limited and inconsistent in others, keeps Hyatt from breaking into the worth it category. Travelers who know the brand often trust it, but casual guests may wonder what the hype is about when they land in one of its less impressive properties. So Hyatt represents progress, a chain that usually feels modern, sometimes feels memorable, but still isn't immune to disappointment. It's a brand that nudges closer to luxury without fully crossing the line. And just ahead of it in our list is a name even more familiar, one that dominates skylines across the world, yet somehow struggles with the weight of its own empire. Number 4. Marriott. Marriott is the giant of giants, with thousands of properties under its umbrella. Sheraton, Westin, Courtyard, Ritz Carlton, and more. It has become almost unavoidable in global travel. For many people, booking a Marriott feels like the safe, professional choice. And to be fair, there's a certain reassurance in its scale. No matter where you go, chances are you'll find one. But size comes with a cost. When a chain spreads itself across so many brands and markets, consistency begins to fracture. A sleek Marriott in Dubai may feel luxurious, while a tired Courtyard in a Midwestern U.S. city can feel downright uninspired. Guests often describe that gap as the brand's greatest weakness. One name, dozens of experiences, and not all of them good. Another sticking point is the loyalty program. Marriott Bonvoy is massive, and while frequent travelers can extract real value, casual guests often find the system confusing and unrewarding. Add to that rising fees for basics like parking or resort amenities, and the shine begins to dull. At premium prices, nickel and diming stings more than at budget chains. Prestige should feel rewarding, not transactional. Still, Marriott isn't sitting still. Some of its flagship properties continue to set a high standard. Rooftop pools, elegant lobbies, attentive service. But those highlights are diluted by countless locations that feel more like corporate placeholders than true destinations. For a company of this scale, the gap between the best and the average is simply too wide. So yes, Yes, Marriott stands taller than Hyatt in brand recognition and reach, but it stumbles under its own weight. It's a giant, but giants move slowly. And just ahead of it in our ranking is a chain that has managed to keep prestige alive more consistently, though even there, cracks in the foundation are starting to show. Number 3. Ritz Carlton. Say the name Ritz Carlton and it immediately evokes luxury. For decades, this brand has stood as the gold standard in hospitality, grand lobbies, attentive staff, and an experience designed to make every guest feel like royalty. Step into a Ritz, and you're met with the kind of polish that few hotel chains can match. It's not just accommodation, it's theater. The strength of Ritz Carlton lies in service. Guests consistently talk about staff who remember names, anticipate needs, and handle problems before they even arise. That kind of attention is rare, and it's what sets Ritz apart from the middle of the pack. You leave feeling not just rested, but recognized. And in the world of travel, recognition is priceless. But even Ritz Carlton isn't untouchable. For one, the price point is steep, sometimes double or triple what competitors charge. That would be easier to justify if every property delivered flawlessly, but reality is more nuanced. Some locations show their age, others lean too heavily on grandeur without updating amenities, and occasionally, guests feel the brand leans on its reputation more than on actual innovation. Prestige can't replace progress. Still, compared to the giants below it in this ranking, Ritz Carlton manages consistency far better. A Ritz stay usually delivers what the name promises: refinement, calm, and comfort. Yes, it's expensive, and yes, not every location is perfect, but as a chain, it continues to carry the weight of expectation with more success than most. That's why Ritz Carlton earns its place in the top 3. It's worth it, with caveats. And next, we move to a brand that matches prestige with a modern, almost cult-like reputation where guests don't just stay, they come back for the experience itself. Number 2. Four Seasons. Four Seasons has become almost synonymous with the idea of modern luxury. Mention the name and most people think of pristine suites, flawless service, and an air of exclusivity that feels just out of reach. For travelers who've experienced it, the brand often sets the benchmark. After a stay at a Four Seasons, other hotels suddenly feel a step behind. What truly defines this chain is consistency. Whether you're in Los Angeles, Paris, or Bali, you know exactly what you're stepping into. Polished design, calm atmosphere, and staff who operate with the quiet confidence of professionals at the top of their field. There's comfort in that predictability, luxury that doesn't feel accidental, but engineered. The service is often the standout. Guests describe moments where staff go beyond duty, arranging last-minute experiences, personalizing rooms with small touches, even remembering a guest's favorite drink from a stay years earlier. These details create loyalty that money can't buy. You don't just feel accommodated, you feel valued. Still, Four Seasons isn't flawless. The prices can feel stratospheric, putting the brand firmly out of reach for most travelers. And for all its polish, critics sometimes say the atmosphere borders on sterile, as if perfection has come at the cost of warmth. A luxury hotel that looks the same in Boston and Bangkok can blur into uniformity. Experience without uniqueness can leave a faint sense of déjà vu. But make no mistake, Four Seasons has earned its place in the top 3. It's consistent, aspirational, and often unforgettable. Yet it doesn't quite claim the crown. That spot is reserved for a brand that combines exclusivity with a sense of character so distinct it transforms a stay into a story. Number 1. Mandarin Oriental. At the very top of this list sits Mandarin Oriental, a name that whispers luxury rather than shouts it. Unlike the giants of the industry, it doesn't blanket every city or highway. It chooses its locations carefully, and that's part of what makes it special. Staying at a Mandarin Oriental feels less like booking a hotel and more like joining an exclusive club, one where elegance is understated and service is deeply personal. Guests often describe their stays in terms of memory rather than amenities. A carefully folded note left on a pillow, a concierge who seems to know the city better than anyone, a spa experience that resets the rhythm of an entire trip. These are the touches that elevate the brand. It's not just about comfort, it's about curation. You don't just visit a place, you remember it. Of course, Mandarin Oriental is not without its drawbacks. With fewer properties worldwide, availability can be limited. And like Four Seasons, the price point is high, often prohibitively so. For most travelers, this is an occasional indulgence rather than a regular option. But that exclusivity is part of its allure. When something is rare, it feels more valuable. What sets Mandarin Oriental apart, even above its luxury peers, is character. Each property reflects not just the brand, but the culture of the city it inhabits. A Mandarin Oriental in Bangkok does not feel like the one in London, and that uniqueness makes each stay feel authentic rather than standardized. Luxury here isn't uniform, it's alive. That's why Mandarin Oriental takes the crown. It proves that the best hotel chain isn't the biggest or the flashiest, but the one that makes every stay feel like a story worth telling. And in travel, stories are the real currency. In the end, hotel chains can make or break a trip. Some drain your wallet and patience, while a rare few actually deliver what they promise. If this list saved you from a travel headache, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more insider travel tips and eye-opening rankings. The best stories are still ahead.